Now, time to say a very, very good morning in America to Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Donald Trump and host of the America First podcast. Sebastian, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Can I just say, in the last 30-second intro, you did more real journalism than all of the mainstream media in the UK. I'm sorry, that was pretty epic.
Well, thank you. Listen, it's the truth. You know, There is absolutely no way that the impeachment process makes any sense unless it is launched in order to remove somebody from office. And this clearly will not remove Donald Trump from office.
No, so people need to understand that, you know, this boogeyman phrase of impeachment doesn't actually mean anything. The impeachment process is the lower house of Congress. It is the charging of an incumbent president. Actually removing him from office takes a supermajority vote in the Senate. We are 6 days away from the inauguration of Biden, and the Senate is in the hands of the GOP for the time being. They're not even going to table a Senate hearing, so it's not going to happen. This is a farrago, it's a farce. And let me just give you the historic context for what happened yesterday. There have only been a handful of impeachments in the history of our republic. The first one was Andrew Johnson at the end of the 19th century. It took 83 days to impeach him. Okay, 83 days. Clinton, it took 37 days to impeach him. The first impeachment less than a year ago of Donald Trump took 21 days. Yesterday, Nancy ramrodded through an impeachment in 8 hours, before which she said, we're not going to have the constitutionally required committee hearings. We're not even going to hear evidence because we don't need to. That's banana republic. When you have a trial and you say, no, we don't need to hear evidence, and we're going to do it in 8 hours. This has nothing to do with reality. This is just spite. This is just political theater.
Yes, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And as I watched it, I could see that that was the case. And I mean, without wishing in any way to diminish what happened last week, it was terribly boring as well. I was watching these speeches one after another. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm thinking of storming the Capitol just to get them to shut up for 5 minutes because it's so dreadfully dull. But, you know, this idea that they think that they have the right to withdraw a candidate from the American voting public. 74 million people voted for this man. They're trying to say we don't want him to ever run again. I mean, how do they have that right?
Not only that, you have USA Today, which is, you know, a big tabloid here in the US, where they wrote an article 2 days ago where they said we need to impeach the president after he leaves office so that he doesn't get Secret Service protection, so that he doesn't get his pension, and so that Melania doesn't get his pension. And think about the demented derangement. You want the president of the United States to leave office without protection. You don't have to agree with him. You don't have to vote for him. But I want Jimmy Carter to be protected from crazies. I want Clinton to be protected from crazies. This is truly the highest pitch level of Trump derangement syndrome. And not only that, let's look at the charge. There was one charge. It was inciting his followers to violent insurrection.
Yeah.
Two things with that. I taught irregular warfare for 6 years for the Defense Department, and I challenge anyone in the UK or the US, give me one example in world history in the last 6,000 years of an insurrection being implemented by unarmed civilians.
Yes.
Just one. I'll wait.
And of course, sorry, go on.
And secondly, the speeches, I was there in the front row at the ellipse of the White House for the president's speech last Wednesday. He said, please march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol to support your congressman. That's the clip I've been playing on my radio show every day. If he had actually incited anyone to violence, don't we think the clip of that sentence would be playing nonstop on the mainstream media? It isn't, because he didn't.
Right. And yet the other clips that are not played very often on mainstream media from the Democrats over the course of the summer, which you've mentioned many times on this show and on your own show, where Black Lives Matter protesters were encouraged to stand firm, who were encouraged to take to the streets, who were encouraged effectively, to take on the police in whichever city of the nation that they were in. You know, everybody seems to have forgotten about that as well.
Not only that, prior to the violence of last year, we've had more than 8 years of the Democrat Party normalizing violence. We have the video, we have the audio, we have Maxine Waters, Congresswoman from California, who says, if you see a member of the Trump administration in public, harass them. She actually said that at a public event. We have the Attorney General of the United States for Barack Obama, who said, if they go low, you kick them, referring to Republicans. And then before Thanksgiving, when he was in office, Obama actually said, if your neighbor is a Republican and you start talking politics with them, he said, get in their face. Now, there's no Republican politician who says, kick them when they're down, get in their face, and harass them in public. One party has started to normalize violence, and it's not us conservatives, it's the Democrats. And the sad thing is the Democrat Party of your dad, of your grandfather, the Democrat Party of JFK, it's dead. It has become a radicalized fringe party.
Which is terribly unfortunate. But it began, of course, in the Clinton era, carried on through the Barack Obama era when Joe Biden was in the White House, overseeing one of the biggest bombing raids of the whole world, right? Donald Trump went to war with absolutely nobody, and yet he is described as the warmonger versus Barack Obama, who bombed half of the world.
Again, don't take our word for it. Check it out. In 1 week, in Obama's tenure, in one weekend, he authorized bombing runs and drone strikes on 8 countries in the Middle East and North Africa. And we voted, 63 million Americans elected a man who said no. He actually campaigned on no more stupid wars. And he's brought our troops back, and he hasn't started one war in 4 years. And I guess that's why he has to be punished by the powers that be in the establishment, quote unquote, elite.
I mean, there's no question in my mind, Sebastian, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, that this is the revenge of the establishment. They hated Trump from the beginning. You know, Donald Trump is not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not going to pretend that I like everything that he's done. You're a great supporter of his. You're a personal friend of his. I expect you to defend him to the hilt. But I don't always defend him to the hilt. But I'm rational and I'm reasonable, and I understand that the way that he operates is sometimes a little bit over the top. However, you know, he shook up Washington, D.C. He didn't quite drain the swamp. But what I was watching yesterday made me quite sick for what is laughably called democracy in any country, because that's not what it was.
No, it was a travesty. It was an abortion. It truly, you know, I had a caller call in the show yesterday, and I'm going to credit him. So Doug said the following. He said, this second impeachment should be worn by the president as a badge of honor. And I fully agree. Why? Because what we saw yesterday was the political establishment for who they really are. What happened yesterday is why we elected Donald Trump 4 years ago. It's why, stunningly, again, this is what the mainstream media won't talk to you about, in November, 10 million more Americans voted for Donald Trump than they did the first time, despite 4 years of calumny, libel, being called a Nazi, a white supremacist. And he went after the swamp. He didn't manage to drain it, but he has shown them for who they are. And my conclusion yesterday, I was really worried for the president after last week's events. I know he didn't cause it because the rioters arrived at the Congress 40 minutes before he finished speaking. So the idea that he incited it is just, you know, unless you've got a time machine, it makes no sense. But I was worried, and I thought the president's going to have to get out of politics completely for a year or two and just chill because of what happened yesterday and what happened last week. After yesterday's travesty, Mike, I think he can get into politics straight away because they have martyred him and they have shown themselves for who they are. So right now, the GOP, the Republican Party, is more Donald Trump's than it has ever been. And guess who we have to thank for that? Crazy Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House.
Yes, and this is also what I was warning about last week, because, I mean, I was given all sorts of flack on social media because of what I've said about Barack Obama. I don't know whether you saw. But basically, I said Nancy Pelosi will be making a massive error. And Nigel Farage was on Julia's show this morning saying exactly this. She made a massive error by doing this because she has martyred Donald Trump. She has ensured that his supporters will be even more now determined to try and get him back into the White House. And he's not going away.
He is. Look, if I know anything about my old boss, my new current boss. This is a man who is not going to go quietly into the night. This is a man who has transmogrified, transformed politics, not just here, but globally. And look, Nigel should know better than anybody else. He started it with Brexit, whether it's Modi in India, whether it's Brexit in the UK, or whether it's Trumpism and the MAGA movement in the US. Populism that goes against the grain of the entrenched establishment interest, who really, let's be honest, it doesn't matter whether you're a Tory or whether you voted for Corbyn. At the end of the day, the establishment really hasn't represented the people in decades, and that's why we're witnessing what we're witnessing. And again, how is it that 4 years ago, for the first time in our republic's history, for the first time since George Washington, we elected somebody who wasn't a retired general and wasn't a politician. That's a message to the world, and it's as powerful as Brexit. And I guarantee you, Donald J. Trump, he's not going anywhere. He's going to leave the White House because he believes in the Constitution, unlike some people. But he's not going anywhere politically, Mike.
And you said on your show a couple of days ago that now the rebuilding begins and the fight back begins. So what does that mean for you? What does it mean for the Trump movement as such? What does it mean for his supporters? What are you going to do?
Two things. So there has to be a groundswell effort to turn the GOP into a populist party that represents the working class, represents all Americans of any skin color. And that's going to, I tell my callers who say, what are you going to do? What can I do? What can I do? Run for office locally. The best thing you can do, whether it's a local school board, is run locally. Secondly, after the events of the last 6 days, Mike, I mean, it's a travesty. The fascists of Twitter, Donald Trump had 90 million followers and they shut him down. And they say the video in which he calls for peace was inciting violence. We have to create a conservative ecosystem of social media. We have to have the messaging system. We have to have a social media platform. We have to create more TV stations and radio. And the beautiful thing is, we have an amazing opportunity. Almost 80 million people voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's a lot of customers.
That is a lot of customers. And I mean, there was some talk that if he didn't win this time around, he might set up his own channel to possibly rival Fox. That might happen. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting time. Also, what we people forget in this country is midterms come around very fast when you're a new president. And in a couple of years' time, or less, probably in a year's time, campaigning for those midterm elections in Congress are gonna be happening. And I mean, I've already predicted that Biden will be one of the worst presidents the United States has ever had. So, I mean, what's he going to do with himself? Because, we hear that there's going to be all this left-wing stuff that they want to do. But what do you think his first kind of 6 months is going to be like?
Well, look, he promised a mask mandate. We're going to be, suffering just like you guys. Yesterday, just a little tidbit. Nancy Pelosi ordered every congressman and woman to wear a mask for the first time in Congress, even if they'd had the coronavirus. I mean, I was texting with one of the GOP leaders, and she says we're not allowed, we will be fined if we don't wear a mask as representatives of our constituents. So we're going to see craziness like that. But I guarantee you right now, he won't be in office for the first year. I mean, we know he's senile. You just watch him. We know that he's said publicly, if I have a disagreement with Kamala, I'm going to invent some ailment and I'm going to step down. So they won't even invoke the 25th Amendment. He's going to be out of office. Kamala's going to come in. But also, very interesting, for all the doomsayers, I'm trying to calm down conservatives. Having a 50-50 split in the Senate means they cannot ram crazy stuff through. Every time there's a tie-breaking vote required, Kamala Harris is going to have to get in a limo from the White House, go to the Senate, and cast the tie-breaking vote. When Obama came in 2008, he had a 10-seat majority in the Senate. He had the House and, of course, the White House. And the only thing they rammed through was Obamacare. So this idea that AOC's Green New Deal and making, Puerto Rico a state is going to happen in the first week. Sorry, guys, it's not, because there are some, not many, but there are a couple of normal Democrats left, and they're not going to go with the crazy agenda. So Biden's going to be ineffectual. He's going to be out before the end of the year, and they're going to be limited in what they can actually do in terms of harming this nation.
And what about the likes of those congressional members who voted against President Trump, like Cheney's daughter and one or two other Republicans. And also, has Mike Pence kind of made up with the president because he refused to carry on with that 25th Amendment nonsense?
I don't think there's much love lost between Mike and the president. I think that's going to take a while to mend. But no, the fact that he couldn't overturn the election, but he could have done in his constitutional mandate, he could have sent the dubious results back to the state houses for recertification. He refused to do so, and the president's not going to forget that for a while. With the 10 congressmen and women who voted as Republicans to impeach the president yesterday, I think in the midterms in 2 years' time, I think they're going to be primaried by conservatives, and I think their political careers are shot, Mike.
Yeah. And as far as the whole kind of calming down, I mean, Donald Trump's speech yesterday, which made it onto Twitter via the White House account, I think so far has had 9 million views. Very statesmanlike. I mean, some people said, well, he should have made that speech last week. I'm not one of those. But it was very statesmanlike. He called for calm. He called for all sides. You wouldn't believe this, by the way, but Sky News last night was being critical of him for calling for calm from all sides, as if, that was somehow the wrong thing to be saying, right? But, he can be a very impressive politician when he wants to be. It's almost annoying that he sometimes does what he does just to wind people up. I mean, it's what I do, but I'm only on the radio.
Yeah, but Mike, the fact is he's not a politician. That's why we elected him. And God bless him for not acting like one of these mealy-mouthed, Janus-faced, scumbags who say one thing and then they don't mean it. So yesterday, look, Biden has promised, he's been, last few weeks, peace and unity, whilst his party is literally, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is making lists of Trump supporters, while the mainstream media, including Forbes magazine, which blows my mind, is saying that big companies in the U.S. should make blacklists of people like Kayleigh McEnany, the president's press secretary, so they never get a job in America again.
It's unbelievable.
They call for peace and unity, and they want to make it impossible for you to earn a crust to feed your children. That's not how you create peace and unity. And banning the president of the United States from Twitter, well, guess what? That's not going to bring peace and unity. So any peace and unity that comes to America is going to have to be built by us, the rational people on the right. And let's also look at the facts. For the last 10 months, we have seen $3 billion worth of damage done to America by BLM and by Antifa. We have seen 30 Americans murdered, including police captains like David Dorn. We've seen 700 law enforcement officers injured in the riots. Back then, the Democrats said, well, that's fine because that's social justice. So the transparent double standards are also becoming apparent to more and more people who may be apolitical and may say, well, you know what? The Democrats, they're just hypocrites. So I agree with you. The next 2 years are going to get very, very interesting.
They really are. Final question to you, Sebastian, and it's been a pleasure talking to you as ever. When does Donald leave the White House? Because if he's not going to go to the inauguration on Wednesday, I presume he's just going to leave at some point, maybe on Tuesday. But it's not very easy to sneak out of the White House, is it? I mean, presumably he's going to be in Marine One, taking off to the airport. How's that going to look? When's it going to happen?
I think you're right. I think it'll probably happen. I don't have any inside scoop yet. I don't think they've decided, and even if I did, I couldn't tell you. It's probably going to be Wednesday. But right now, DC is unbelievable.
Yeah.
They have deployed more troops, more National Guard, because the left are so scared now and they're so hysterical. We have more National Guards in D.C. than we have in Baghdad. 20,000 uniformed officers with their guns have been demanded by Nancy. And so this city is a ghost town, and they've basically shut down every street for blocks and blocks and blocks around Capitol Hill and the White House. So, there's nobody here to witness anything. The mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, for the first time in American history, has said, don't come to the inauguration. We want to have a virtual inauguration. Biden's going to be there with his clique, but that's about it. And I expect the president, good for him. I wouldn't go to the inauguration. after what happened to him in the last 2 months in America, after what happened to him in the last 4 years. So, yeah, I think it's going to be Marine One. It's going to be Andrews Air Force Base. It's going to be Air Force One to Mar-a-Lago in Florida, and a well-deserved rest for the president until he gets back into the political saddle in the very near future.
Brilliant. Well, if you see Nancy Pelosi on your travels, you can tell her that she's made it onto our Plank of the Week list this week at Talk Radio. So,
can you give her a gold one, please?
Certainly. Well, I mean, she's got so much money. I couldn't believe when I checked up her net worth the other day. She's got about $150 million. I mean, incredible, isn't it? It's great to be a politician in the United States of America.
That's why she eats $100 per gallon ice cream and keeps it in her $24,000 fridge, and then brags about it on TV.
Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Sebastian, great to talk to you. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Sebastian Gorka reporting into us from Washington DC, which, as he says, looks like a war zone right now. There are more troops there than they've got in Baghdad. Extraordinary times in the United States of America. But listen, you won't hear an interview like that on any other radio station. I'll tell you why. Because everybody else hates Donald Trump.